Welcome to my review of Speed Limit. And I played this on the Series X. It took me around 2 hours and 18 minutes to beat. And this is on PlayStation 4, Series X, Switch, and PC, I believe. I thought this would be a unique game to cover because it's actually pretty cool. It really mixes up a lot of different gameplay styles, for a game based on retro-style games. It kind of takes on a mix of those type of games. So you see here, you start off, in this subway train here, and it starts off as a side-scrolling action type of game. The game is a little bit like, Hotline Miami in a lot of ways. It's not as hard as those games, much easier than those games, but it is pretty challenging. It has that rapid death and rapid reloading style, kind of like Super Meat Boy, Hotline Miami, those kind of games, where you die, but it reloads instantly. But you do have to complete checkpoints to get to the next area. So once you complete a checkpoint, you have unlimited continues and the game saves at that checkpoint. So you can always start at the last checkpoint you got to. So, it is forgiving with that. But some of the checkpoints can be pretty lengthy and you'll have to memorize a lot of little sequences to get through them. You'll have to find your own path, similar to an old arcade game where you got to kind of memorize a path from checkpoint to checkpoint. It's not the kind of game that you can just play through on reaction alone. You'll definitely have to memorize some of the areas. But it has some, really good gameplay for the kind of, each section is kind of, some sections are better than others, but each one switches up the gameplay style in some way. So I'm going to show some of that in the review, but some of them are better executed than others. None of the sections in the game are, on the level of the best 8 and 16-bit games from, back in the fucking days, but there is some good gameplay, and it is an enjoyable game to play through if you like trial and error style, arcade type of games. If not, you may find this game extremely frustrating because it can, like I said, it can be very difficult, and it is trial and error. It wasn't too bad for me, but it was definitely challenging. There were some challenging checkpoints. But if you're familiar with these type of games, you'll probably complete it within several hours. So now you see in this next area, it switches over to an overhead driving style, and in this style, you can actually use your analog sticks to kind of aim freely, like a twin stick shooter, while you're driving. So it can be kind of tough to drive and aim at the same time. It does take some getting used to, and it'll definitely require some skill and some memorization, just to know what's coming up. Because sometimes shit comes out so fast, unless you have it memorized, you'll just keep crashing. Pretty much, most of the areas in the game, I think, are one-hit death, if not all of them, from what I remember. So, though you do get frequent checkpoints, you do have to learn the areas. But what I really liked about the game was that it mixes it up. Pretty much each stage is a different retro-inspired gameplay style. So, there's a lot of variety, even though it's a short game. So this is kind of like a boss fight, but it's not much of a fight. It's mainly just, eventually you rush ahead and the truck gets stuck. It can't follow you. But there are some other boss fights. So now it switches over to more of a third-person driving view here, where you're shooting and driving. Like you were doing before, but now it's from a different perspective, which changes the way you play it a lot. The gameplay feels a lot different as a result. You're dodging traffic, in a more, not really realistic, but, the perspective is more realistic than an overhead view. So now, shortly after, you'll go into this overhead helicopter-style gameplay. So now you're switching gameplay again, and it becomes kind of an isometric-style shooter on a weird angle, but it's kind of cool. Again, it's a lot of memorization with the checkpoints, knowing what's coming up. You have your machine gun and you have missiles for the air units. So you got to kind of balance that. The machine gun only does damage in a certain part. As you can see, there's a distance ahead of my helicopter where the bullets are hitting the water. That's where the machine gun is effective. If it's not in that area, then the machine gun doesn't make contact with the enemy. So you do have to get your positioning right and dodge shit. As you can see here, you got to dodge those machine guns. It does reload fast. So now I'm editing way ahead here. I don't know. I don't remember if I show all the different gameplay styles in this review because I haven't beat it in a little while. But this is the final gameplay segment. And each one is pretty lengthy. And this one is kind of maybe the worst executed of all the different gameplay sections. I didn't like this one as much. It's kind of irritating because initially you have to shoot down these ships. And, you got to shoot down these aircraft while you're driving, kind of like Afterburner style. But the weird thing about it is, the jet is rushing towards you. In Afterburner, you're looking at the back of your jet, which is makes a little bit more sense. This one's a little bit more awkward, and there's not much to the gameplay. I mean, it's pretty easy to shoot down the jets. So I thought this one was probably the weakest of the bunch, but aside from that, though, this is the final boss, and I thought the final boss fight had a lot of cool aspects to it, though it is kind of irritating. It's very tedious how you have to take it out. You have to take out each part. Once you learn how to dodge everything, it's easy to execute, but it goes on for quite a while. I think I edited it down. But it goes on for quite a while, and there is some very irritating gunfire that's kind of hard to see because it matches your gunfire. I think they could have done a better job with that by making the enemy gunfire maybe a different color or some shit, just so you can see when you're being shot at. Because if you're shooting a stream of bullets and the machine gun comes out and it's shooting a stream of bullets, it's completely invisible pretty much. You won't be able to see it and you'll just die since it's one-hit death. So since this is a long boss fight, I thought that could be kind of tedious and irritating to have to keep restarting because you were unable to see something and react to it. But it is completely learnable, but it's kind of irritating. But I thought aside from that, it was kind of a cool fight. This game, I got it probably for only a few bucks, maybe $2 or $3, so I thought it was worth it. If you like that old arcade style, I think it's definitely worth looking into. I can't remember if I edited this fight down or not, but I know it does go on for some minutes, so it is a long final fight. It's basically just about learning all the various patterns of all the attacks and what to take out in what order to make things easier. Which I do cover all that in my tutorial, so I will link the tutorial that it has commentary. It explains all my strategies for the game, and it should make the game a lot easier if you watch that. But yeah, it's a pretty good game. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good, solid game. It's nothing great, but it is a fun arcade-style game. And, the one thing I like about it, like I said, I thought it was worth featuring because it mixes up the gameplay styles pretty much on every stage is a different gameplay style. So, you don't usually see that in any games. So I think that's cool. I mean, even retro games back in the day that shifted gameplay styles within a single game. You got games like Lawnmower Man for Super Nintendo, not a great game. Bayou Billy for NES, pretty shitty game. But there were some very good games that did it, as well as Vice Project Doom for the NES switched gameplay styles, and that was actually a very good NES game. There were games that did it very well, but they didn't usually switch gameplay style in every single fucking stage. It was usually here and there you'd get, you start off as a side-scrolling game, then maybe it goes to a driving stage, or a light gun shooter stage, or whatever it might be. This game switches in on every stage, so I thought that was kind of cool. I think that is one strength of the game. But like I said, different genres that it tries to do are of different quality. So it does range in quality with each different gameplay style that they try to take on. But none of them are bad. So at least the game didn't fuck up in that regard. All of them are solid and pretty good. So overall, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.